Hello everyone, here we are again, our third video. So this is our website, as you already know, and today will be the last video regarding insulin doses adjustments. And as I said to you before, it will be about basal bolus insulin regimen. So I know that lots of people will be using this type of insulin regimen at the moment, either people with type 1 diabetes or type 2. So this video will be, as the other ones, will be more focused on type 2 diabetes, because as we all know, type 1 will be all a little bit different with the doses. In the other hand, I will always recommend people with type 1 diabetes to look at this video, because they can always learn and understand how the insulins will work, and what should they do, or the way they should think about the rationale behind this type of regimen. So it's always good to know and get more information, but of course, as you already know, that people with type 1 diabetes that don't produce any type of insulin, so usually they use ratios. They have to understand how much carbs they are eating at meals and get that in account, and also the blood sugars, how they are. And I'm not talking about that today, but just going through how the insulins will work, and what should we check to understand if it's working for this type of regimen. So as in other videos, I always will ask you to put your set up your meter with the correct date and hour, and take some of the data, some of the readings you have, if you have your correct hour and correct date. If you don't have it yet, I would advise you to do it and then wait a little long, like 3 to 5 days, until you adjust your insulin, following what I'm going to teach you today. So regarding the targets, we already discussed this. I would focus on the blood sugars before meals around 4 and 7, but once again, please stick with your own targets, the ones that you establish with your diabetes team. And 2 hours after meals will be around 8.5, less than 8.5, but again, stick with your own readings, your own targets that was established for you. So regarding basal bolus insulin regimen, we talk about the basal insulin and the quick-acting insulins. We call it basal bolus. The basal is because you always have the background insulin, the basal insulin that will inject once or twice. It depends on the insulin you're taking. And bolus will be the insulin that you will take to cover your meals. As you already know, and I already talked about this in previous videos, you have different types of basal insulin, different names, different actions. I'm not sure if you know all of these insulins. The three last ones are newish for us, or for you. Maybe it is not being around for long, but they are here already, at least in the UK. So I can tell you more or less a Basaglar. It's similar to the Lantus. They call it biosimilar basal insulin. And the Tresiba will be the insulin degludec, which is a really slow release insulin. Maybe our listeners and our followers that have type 1 diabetes, usually they can be on this type of insulin. And Toujeo, which is a high strength Lantus, 300 units, so it's three times stronger than the Lantus. For the quick acting, usually it's used the Novorapid and the Humalog. So talking about our how does it work? So you have the purple line showing the Lantus, which you already know, or inject once or twice per day, and usually more or less the same time. There is a difference with the Trujillo and the Tresiba, but I will just focus because they can be injected in different times. But I'm not going to focus on that ones, and I will make it general for the lantas. You should be always injecting more or less at the same times, either morning or evening or afternoon, where you usually inject, at least 24 hours apart. And the green lines you see there will be the novorapid or the Humalog acting. So you always inject before the meals, at least 10 to 15 minutes, or really just when you have your meal ready, you inject, and then you eat. So starting from the beginning with breakfast, you already have or you inject in your lantus or your other background insulin in the morning or evening. So focus just on the rapid acting insulin. So that rapid acting insulin will cover the breakfast. So meaning that how do you know that the doses you are taking of your rapid acting is working? So a good way to do it is to check your blood sugars, either or also both of them, 2 hours after breakfast and before lunch. So what type of readings would you expect from this both readings? So 2 hours after breakfast, if you have a reading that will be more than 8.5, which you remember focusing on our previous targets that we discussed, and before lunch, because the insulins that are quick acting will always last for at least 4 to 6 hours. So the readings before lunch will be also really, for the breakfast time, will be really a good readings to understand how is your insulin doing, if it's enough or not. So in these both cases, so before you have it, 2 hours after a meal, in this case, because we're talking about breakfast, will be after breakfast. If you have more than 8.5, and before lunch, because it's the next meal you're having, and because your quick acting insulin will last between 4 and 6 hours before lunch and before it's a meal, you always will expect to have between 4 to 7. But in this case we are talking about adjustments, so if you before lunch you will have more than 7, more than 3 days, I would say you have the majority, you will of the days running high. I would advise you to increase your insulin at breakfast 1 to 2 units. This is I say 1 to 2 because everyone is different, everyone is really sensitive, and you can always go slow if you are more confident. If you think it's really you are really comfortable and it's being really on the high side, really like on the 15s, on the 18s, I would advise you to go straight to plus 2 units, and then you can always see if you will have benefits or not from this. Talking about now with lower readings, if you focus on 2 hours after breakfast moment and before lunch as the same, because you're talking about breakfast, you focus on this type of hours. You will if you have hypos in either of these ones, and you have to understand why you had hypos. Did you inject too much insulin and you didn't focus, and you had an expected exercise, or you didn't your meal wasn't even that much. So I will always recommend you to reduce your insulin at breakfast between 1 to 2 units, but always try to understand how and why you have hypos. What happened? Is this a one-off? Is this happening quite frequently? Going now to lunchtime. So as you can see, lunchtime, the insulin will cover the glucose intake at lunch, meaning that you will inject your insulin before lunchtime, and it will last, as I said, between 4 to 6 hours. So following the same rational as for breakfast time. I would suggest you to check your blood sugars 2 hours after lunch and before dinner, because you will have a more accurate understanding of what's going on with your blood sugars. How did your blood sugar level react with your insulin doses? So if you have 2 hours after lunch more than 8.5, and before dinner they are not quite on targets, and they are more than 7, I would advise you to take to increase for the next dose at lunchtime 1 to 2 units. And as I said, just it will be out of your own decision if you want just to go slowly and increase 1 or half, or even 2 units if you are more confident. Regarding hypos, once again, try to understand what happened. Did you had just too much insulin or not? Do you know why you're having hypos? Treat your hypos correctly. Go to our website. You have a really good article on hypos. The article is called "Are You Hypo Prepared?" Gives you really good tips and how to treat a hypo as you buy the book, if you can say like that. So regarding hypos, I would suggest you to decrease your insulin doses 1 to 2 units for the lunchtime, for next lunchtime. So always go between 3 to 5 days and look, okay, I'm having too much hypos, or I'm having too much hyper that 2 hours after lunch and really before dinner. So what's going on? So just make a decision on reducing your insulin doses. Focusing now on your insulin, your rapid acting insulin at dinner time. So we will cover your glucose intake at dinner time, so we inject before dinner, and I would advise you to understand what's going on, checking your blood sugars 2 hours after dinner or before bed. So for this one, of course, for 2 hours after dinner, if it's more than 8.5, I would suggest you to increase 1 to 2 units. And before bed, I say here your target, because I know that in myself, I'm not really 100% confident to tell you, okay, just increase 1 to 2 units because it's too high. Of course, if you know it's too high, I would suggest you to of course increase the insulin because it's really out of target. But for nighttime, and because I know there's a big fear of hypos at night, before bed, if you check your blood sugars, it's really understanding what is your target, how do you feel comfortable, what's your level of blood sugars to go to bed, not with fear of hypo, and how much is it the blood sugar levels you want for you to be before you go to bed, so you feel more confident and you have a more quiet night and more feel more relaxed. So the same thing for when you have low blood sugars, of course. Before bed, I would say if it's less than 4, but maybe I would suggest you to be a little bit more on the high side before bedtime, like around 5, 6. So as you already know which target is yours before you go to bed, how do you feel comfortable? So this is really just a guidance for yourself, but I would suggest you to see what's going on if you're really having hypos, even during the night. What's going on? Should you decrease your insulin? Are you taking your insulin after meal and not before? Is it too much insulin? Don't forget that this insulin that you take with meals will last until 6 hours. It really depends on the person and their own systems, but think of what to do. So just in a resume, I hope I was clear. This is quite simple to understand. So when you inject insulin at breakfast, you will see the results in blood sugar wise range 2 hours after breakfast and before lunch, because as I said, the insulin will last in your body until up to 6 hours. At lunch, the same thing, so 2 hours after lunch and before dinner. And at dinner, you have the bedtime, and once again, it will be within your own targets as how do you feel comfortable to go to bed. So, any questions, any queries? If you think I wasn't really clear, please let us know. Please give us your comments. Send us an email with your questions if you're struggling with something. Our email is hello@diabetes.com, as you have it in front of you now. And please go to our website. We have really good articles. We have other podcasts or videos for you. Follow us on Instagram, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel. So, guys, thank you very much and take care.